actually these moments are quite, sorry.
Okay, please. Ask you why you call this actually this Arab
revolt. Actually, the revolution is happening there. No, this revolution is not completed and goes step by step. They actually didn't attack the army and the state because they couldn't. So I mean, that is really revolutionary which is going on there. Of course, I mean, don't know. I mean, actually, in Cyprus, also, if you want to make a revolution in this society, then that could be a way to have a kind of universality with consent, own kind of actual ethnicity. So my question still is, what you call it revolt? And particularly, maybe actually Professor Wallish can answer me.
But why you said revolt and not revolution? I think because, first of all, the process is going on. There is a revolt and a rebellion, and one hopes that will end up in revolution. That's one reason I guess she used the word revolt.
I don't have any question, but I just want to say something to Chanel Bey. I think his name was Chanel. He said the basic things he's looking for is the dignity and ID. I think the dignity he has inside, and the ID he's looking for is, I think, is inside his wallet. But I also want to say something else about the relation between Turkey and the Northern Cyprus. I think it's like the relation between mother and child. Turkey gave birth to Northern Cyprus in 1983 and raised it. So Cyprus is now 28 years old, let's say a man. And now Cyprus says, oh, I want to marry Aisha, which is a Greek side. But Turkey says, no, you can't. And Cyprus says, but I want to. But the Turkey says, then I'm not going to give you the money to marry her. So that's what's happening in Northern Cyprus right now. What else I want to say is, he said the problem is not money, but whenever we have...
That must be a quite phallic mother.
Probably. But what he says is, they're not doing this protest or mobilizations because of the money matters, but whenever Turkey decreases the salaries, this kind of protests always happen. I've never heard or watched any of these protests happening which wasn't related to money matters. It was always related to money matters. Turkey said, oh, I'm decreasing the money of the salaries of the civil servants. And Turkey also said, oh, I'm not going to send you $500 million anymore. So the Turkish Cypriots said, okay, then we have objection about it, and you open the Greek Cypriot flags, and you said you don't want Turkey anymore. Just one more thing to say, like he was talking about the nationalism, and he was saying he's not Turkish Cypriot, but he's Cypriot speaking Turkish. I think this is wrong. If you're looking for an ID, you have to accept the fact that you are Turkish Cypriot, and like many other, I'm not generalizing yet like you did, but we didn't write the Turkish nationalism on the walls as you did. We wrote it to the grounds of Turkish Cyprus with our bloods. Thank you.
Well, I found, thank you all for your wonderful talks. Now, my question concerns the last two talks by Dr. Kizilurek and Dr. Wallerstein. Now, there seems to be a kind of like a very vast difference there. On the one hand, you have a class-based analysis of the world economic crisis, and on the other hand, we have a reification of an ideological construction of bourgeois capital. Now, and my question, and well, in the end, I would like the speakers to comment on this division. And my second question pertains to Dr. Kizilurek. Now, I hear republicanism, and I'm wondering if it's going to be, the same sort, liberal capitalism that is giving birth to what we're seeing now, ethnic particularisms and nationalisms and so forth. And, well, if it's going to be flowers of identities going around, well, I remember Mao, he said, well, let 1,000 flowers bloom. on the condition that they are red, though, no?
I just wanted to say, last night you spoke about this exhaustion theory, and I wish you were able to speak a little bit more about it tonight. But I guess I wanted to ask, and I'm sorry, I'm really asking about something last night, but in terms of being exhausted and the example of Northern Cyprus, I mean, Northern in Ireland, how do you feel like that the critical mass and these uprisings and these protests affect this exhaustion? Because I think everybody in Cyprus is at the peak of exhaustion already. So in terms of the outside people and these marches, how do you feel that we can affect and maybe kind of push this exhaustion to another level?
Thanks. Is there any other questions?
I haven't really fully formulated this on my mind, but when we look at the social mass movements in the north of Cyprus and in the Arab world, maybe we can, or can we, maybe this is my question, can we say that people who are excluded from the core within the world systems theory are actually trying to get into the core? Maybe the periphery is revolting to the fact that they are left out. Maybe within the microcosm of Cyprus, Turkish Cypriots are the periphery, and they are trying to become the core, get into the core and share the political will and the economic prosperity of the core of the Republic of Cyprus. That's my question.
Now I'm going to abuse my powers and ask a question. Actually, it's a question that Professor Aristides raised, and I think it's really, really crucial, and I would like to raise it to the speakers. And this is the question that he raised about the recent mobilizations in the north, whether they are short-term, sporadic mobilizations with no long-term strategy, and if there's a strategy involved, what kind of a strategy is it? So maybe our speakers can start with, providing answers to the questions, and we might as well take another round of questions.
Speak to some of those things. Look, for one thing, I called it the Arab Revolt because they're calling it the Arab Revolt. They're not calling it a revolution. It is the second Arab Revolt that has real historic meaning within the Arab world, to call it the second Arab Revolt, and that's what they're calling it. Is it a revolution? Well, we'll see. We don't know. We don't know. That's precisely the point I was making. There are many forces that join together in a revolt, and there are many forces that try to channel it and limit it and redirect it. And we don't know how it's going to come out. This is a continuing struggle. That's the first thing. Secondly, you ask about exhaustion. That refers to my discussion yesterday of the conditions under which situations such as those in Cyprus, where you have two communities who have, for whatever historic reason, entered into conflict with each other, which seems intractable, etc. Do they ever get resolved? And my answer was, many of them have gotten resolved historically, and there is one factor that tends to come into it, which I call the factor of exhaustion, of people who are tired of it, and it constrains their memories of anger. And besides, the population 40 years later, most of it, the majority of people don't even remember themselves what the situation was when it began. You have a turnover of generations, and that operates sometimes to be a factor in the resolution of the problem. Now, do people who feel excluded from the core want to get into it? Yes, of course. That's part of the problem. Everybody wants to be rich. Let's put it as simple as that. Right? And people who are suffering materially would like not to be suffering materially, and would like to have the advantages of what they see are the advantages of people living in wealthier countries. I sometimes call this the desire to become like Denmark. Everybody would like to be as wealthy as the Danes and remembers the fact that Denmark once was a very poor country that only made butter and a few other things. And somehow, magically, they became... well, the simple answer to that is everybody cannot become Denmark. There is no way in which we can have a world that everyone will... First of all, it's impossible in the framework of capitalism, because capitalism requires a polarized system. But secondly, there are not enough resources in the world, given the expansion of world population. We can't begin to have a world in which everyone would be living at the standard of living of an average Dane today. So that's one of the crucial problems of the entire world system, and that's a problem that we need to resolve. So our chair says we should ask, are these sporadic, or do we have a long-term strategy? Well, some people have proposed a long-term strategy that doesn't stop sporadic uprisings. When the people got together in Tunisia, they didn't sit down and plan it beforehand. There wasn't a long preparation of a revolutionary force that said we should rise up. It was sporadic in the sense that a particular act by a particular individual struck a chord, and in a tinderbox, which Tunisia turned out to be, the match lit and the thing burst, which was unexpected. And once it burst, it spread. Okay? That wasn't planned. That's not a long-term strategy. But of course, Arisitas is absolutely right. If we want to transform the world, we do have to think about a long-term strategy. So it's a problem of taking advantage of the sporadic uprising and attempting to build on that and to utilize it in terms of a long-term strategy, which, yes, we should all be talking about.
Actually, I will start by Arisitas' question. What is the future of the struggle of Turkish Cypriots? What can be this future? I think this depends very much how this will be relating into there. I don't think so that it can survive as a local event in an isolated part of the world like Northern Cyprus. It's very important that that struggle is related to Greek Cypriots and to Greek Cypriot struggle for the unification, as I said before, in a federal state beyond nation and nationalism. But also it has to relate to Turkey, to the democratization struggle in Turkey. It has to relate to Kurdish movement in Turkey. It has to relate to the other democratization attempts in Turkey, which is quite important, because it should not remain local talking of economics and politics only in the North Cyprus. I don't see there any future, independent how strong Turkish Cypriots are in the streets. That will not bring any result, to my mind. Arista said also put a different question before, a second one. I mean, instrumentalization part, I responded to that. But I mean, if a young generation can learn a new narrative in the Greek Cypriot community, I mean, this is the basic challenge here. As you know very well, there is only one narrative based on the victimhood of the Greek Cypriots. And if you are the only victim, then of course you don't produce a policy of reconciliation. That's why we don't produce a policy of reconciliation. As society, as a state, and when I'm saying we, I mean now Republic of Cyprus and everything there. So we have a very big challenge there, all right? Just to be aware of that. And I had another question which I didn't understand well about the Republican patriotism, etc. Well, let me say one thing. We are not going to build in Cyprus a nation state, right? So we will not create a homogeneous nation here. So we are not interpreting, I mean, I did not refer republicanism to create a nation state like in 19th century framework that everyone is same and we homogenize. Quite opposite. I talk about a state beyond nationalism, but Republican patriotism can teach me something. It can teach me liberty. It can teach me to love my constitution and liberties if I go to Russia and others. So it can give me a concept of patrie, which is not romanticizing anything and which is not essentialist, but which is absolutely political. It's exactly what we are looking at Cyprus. We are looking to create a political union by politics and not by culture, but not by common culture. So in that sense, it can be a reference, but definitely it should go beyond the nation state understanding to have any success in this context. Now, if to class issue, in search to create a post-national republic, federal republic in Cyprus, who are the agencies of this? All right? I mean, who will build this? Is this done only by the working class? Are we going to exclude bourgeoisie if there is any elements of bourgeoisie is going for along with it? Of course not. We will not exclude bourgeoisie. And I don't believe that in that context necessarily the working class is contributing more than other groups. So that would be really, it will be an alliance of different classes, actually, that's and beyond ethnic groups. That's the only thing you can have hope for.
I will address two little points. The one is the fact that most societies bounded by borders or divided by fences in the world are not monoethnic. Very few of them are. Now there is the belief, the historical belief, in our most kind of inspiring moments that the other can and may be expendable. Well, I would like people who think that an armed solution to others is plausible in the world to come and study where I've come from. Let's look at this final solution, so-called, in Rwanda, Burundi, South Africa, and so on, where there is a very strong idea, there was a very strong idea that the rule of arms aimed against another would end the problem. No. And if we look at all the history of modernity, those who were supposed to be exterminated, othered, chased, have survived. And that remains a key point for our lessons. So, there is also this belief that we are all warriors and have been warriors. And that is what creates our manhood, and that is what creates the admiration in our women. It might not. Okay. But we are all warriors. Leads to war and leads to devastation. There is no conflict since 1970s that has solved any problem in the world that involved identity issues. There is no observable thing, and yet we go on and on and on, as if that subconscious belief that we all have is the solution, that the other will be disappeared or will disappear. I do not think so. The more that consciousness come about, the more people can talk. That's the one thing. Second thing is that we have to understand Cyprus, of course, as part of a broader basin, very near to all kinds of other societies, and to begin understanding it as a society that is not a geopolitical point of intervention in other societies, but to understand it as a society that needs to grow with all the societies around it in this part of the Mediterranean. Without that kind of consciousness, there is no escape into Europe. We are here, and the solutions have to be local, regional, and if Europe helps, fine. If Europe doesn't help, well, what the hell? Okay. So those are my two little points. Do not think that you can get what you will by othering and exterminating another. And secondly, do not think that all of a sudden somebody is going to lift this island off the sea and send it somewhere else like a boomerang. The boomerang's return.
Just 2 points. Exhaustion. I think people in Cyprus are just sick and tired of the repetition, and I think this is very important. I'm glad Haris Psaltis is here, whose research has pointed out that actually since 2004, when Greek Cypriots said no and the Turkish Cypriots said yes to the plan, there are things happening that may point to a convergence despite the frustrations, despite what the media is saying. So I think that we have to bear with the research that is happening, and I think it's serious, and we have to understand the processes that are taking place. And this is where I take issue with Nicolas Eftera's question about identity and class. They can be seen as polar opposites, but in fact they are converging. In fact, we're seeing here the relationship between the economic and the existential and the belief and the belonging and the whole thing is converging, producing explosive political results. This is producing the mobilization. It's not one or the other, it's both together. And I think this should inform our understanding of what is happening. My second question relates to Aris and Umut. Another question is a question about the strategy. I think Chanel will tell us more about the strategy of the trade union movement in the north and in the platform, because he had just come from that where they planned the next steps. But I would also say that the important point is to relate to what is going on in the south. And I agree with Niazi here, and I agree with Emmanuel here, that we need to relate the two. We have learned something from 2004. I really think we have. 2004 produced a negative result, which is still causing a lot of frustration. But I think the movement is learning. That's why Chanel happens to be a leading person, and his trade union, is a leading trade union in the struggle in the north, but also a leading trade union in the initiative for reunification of Cyprus. He came to a meeting, just exhausted as everybody else, who's hungry by the way, to address his meeting because he takes it seriously. The same I understand from the trade union in the south. That's why PO has been here. So the whole point is that we must begin to produce. Now, Niazi says we are not producing a policy of reconciliation. I don't think we need a policy of reconciliation. We need a praxis for reconciliation. We need a policy of reconciliation to emerge as a result of the social struggles that will come and will lead to the creation of the conditions for reconciliation. Otherwise, official policy is reconciliation, as it's criticized. The official policy is reconciliation. So I think a new policy is emerging. So I would take what Niazi is saying about the lack of things, and I would say, actually, what is not there or has not been there, perhaps is the process of becoming, and it's up to us to make it happen.
Everybody's tired, exhausted actually after the long day. I don't want to talk too much. The young friend of mine, he asked me a question about the ID. I don't know, I have two in my pocket. All are artificial. All are artificial. I would like to ask you that if Mr. Professor Washington is staying in Cyprus for many years, how can we define him as an identity? I'm a Turkish Cypriot, you are Greek Cypriot, he is American Cypriot. Most probably, we shall define him like that. I know I'm mentioning something about the cultural, We have a culture, own culture, as a community, Turkish Cypriot community. We speak Turkish, we are not religious people, we are secular people. Greek Cypriot people are different than us about religion issues. I don't stuck on it. I define myself. I'm talking about myself. I am Turkish-speaking Cypriot. This is the decision of mine. And I don't care about the ideas. But I want to know who am I about the Turkish Cypriot or citizens of the Republic of Cyprus or citizens of TRNC or Turkey or whatever you say. This is a very clear point that I would like to raise up. On the other issue, that what we have been trying to do for next step, I fully agree with Niyazi about the identity also, and the new strategy or new way what we want to do is, I know that we only Turkish Cypriot protesting in the streets is not enough. We gathered 50,000 people 2 days ago. We gathered more than 7,000 people. It's a quite good number. If you compare it to Egypt, the population of Egypt is about 80 million. They gathered 1 million in the street. Population of Turkish Cypriot, 130,000. We gathered 70,000 people in the street. It's mean that we gathered half of the population. They trust us. And I believe that if we, of course we shall fight for, they will trust us more, and it will be, we shall do it many things. We decided today that we continue our struggle in the street because the representative of us, I mean the pseudo-government in the north, they don't represent the Turkish Cypriots. This is the main issue. It's under influence of Turkey. We have been trying to create another power in the street to represent Turkish Cypriots. This is a clear decision. On the other hand, we would like to take this issue to international world. We shall go to Brussels for demonstrating in front of the European Parliament. We shall make some contact. We shall try to understand what we want, what is our will. We have 13 points that we need to tell the people that openly to get support of the international world also. On the other hand, we have been expecting something from Greek Cypriots too. We are depending Turkey because the faults of the Greek Cypriot leadership since 1940s, which Niyazi mentioned. We are Turkish Cypriots, we have our own identity. We would like to share the identity with Greek Cypriots together. We don't want to depend to anybody. I feel myself like a meat in a sandwich. One side is Greek Cypriot, the other side is Turkish Cypriot. Who am I? And I'm being like a toast, every day. Because of that, we have to fight not only for the Turkish Cypriot rights, we have to fight for our country. Cyprus should be united. We fight for that. We don't want any money. They charged me 4.5 years imprisonment. I went to court 3 years because we gave out visit to the newspapers. We say that Ankara, we don't want your money, your civil servants, and your economic package. And we pay the bill of this. They charge us 4.5 years imprisonment, and I went to court 3 years. At the end, we won. It's been that not to demanding money of Turkey is a crime in North. Okay, thank you very much.
Wrap up everything because it's been a long day, and I want to take the opportunity to thank all of our speakers, and I also want to thank you who have come all the way on a Friday night while you might have done else things, like going partying. You came here, so we really appreciate that. Thank you and good evening.